My name is Evelyn Harper, and I'm 62 years old, though I feel 100 after the last few months. I raised Tommy alone after his father left us when he was just a boy barely tall enough to reach the kitchen counter. Those years were hard, but they were ours, filled with late-night talks over hot cocoa, his lopsided grin when he'd ace a math test, and the way he'd hug me tight before heading off to college. Tommy was my anchor, my reason to keep going when the world felt too heavy. But now, standing in my empty kitchen, I realized I'd lost him long before his death. Tommy met Sarah in his final year of college. She was vibrant, ambitious, with a laugh that could light up a room. I liked her at first, she seemed to make Tommy happy, and that was all I ever wanted. They married young against my quiet reservations, and settled into a life that felt so different from the one Tommy and I had shared. Sarah was a city girl, always chasing the next big thing, while Tommy, my dreamer, seemed content to follow her lead. Over time, their visits grew rare, their calls sporadic. I told myself it was normal, kids grow up, they build their own lives. But deep down I felt the distance growing, a chasm I couldn't bridge. When Tommy got sick, it was Sarah who called me, her voice clipped and professional, like she was delivering a report. Stage 4 lung cancer, she said. He was only 32. I drove 6 hours to their apartment, my hands trembling on the wheel, praying I'd get there in time to hold him, to tell him I loved him one more time. But when I arrived, Sarah met me at the door, her eyes red but her posture rigid. "He's sleeping," she said, and I wasn't allowed to see him. Not that day, not the next. She said he needed rest, that visitors would overwhelm him. I believed her because I wanted to believe she was protecting him. But now, standing in my kitchen, her long gone, felt like a confession of something far crueler. I sank into a chair, my mind racing. How could I not know my own son's funeral had already happened? How could Sarah, the woman he loved, keep that from me? I called her back, my voice shaking with a mix of grief and fury. "Sarah, what do you mean he's long gone? When was the funeral? Why didn't you tell me?" Her sigh crackled through the phone. "Evelyn, it was last week. It was small, just close family. Tommy didn't want a big fuss, and I respected that. I thought you'd understand." "Understand?" I choked on the word. "I'm his mother, Sarah. How could you think I wouldn't want to be there?" "You weren't here," she said, her voice flat. "You didn't see how fast it happened. I did what I thought was best." The call ended abruptly, leaving me with nothing but questions and a hollow ache in my chest. I stared at the photos on my fridge, Tommy at his high school graduation, Tommy and me at the lake, Tommy and Sarah on their wedding day. Had I failed him somehow? Had I let him slip away, even before the cancer took him? The next morning I packed a bag and drove to the city. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to find them in my quiet house, surrounded by memories that felt like ghosts. The 6-hour drive gave me too much time to think, to replay every moment I'd missed with Tommy over the years. I remembered the last time we spoke 3 months ago when he called to check in. His voice had been weak, but he'd laughed, said he was fighting, said he'd see me soon. I clung to that promise, but now I wondered if Sarah had kept him from me even then. When I arrived at their apartment, Sarah opened the door, her face a mask of exhaustion and irritation. "Evelyn, what are you doing here?" she asked, not inviting me in. "I need to understand," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Why didn't you tell me about the funeral? Why didn't you let me say goodbye?" She crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing. "I told you it was what Tommy wanted. He didn't want you to see him like that at the end. He wanted you to remember him strong, not broken." Her words hit me like a slap. "That wasn't your decision to make, Sarah. It was mine. I deserved to be there." "You weren't here," she snapped, her voice rising. "You were hours away, living your life, while I was changing his sheets, feeding him, watching him fade. Where were you when I needed help?" Her accusation strung, but it also ignited something in me, a resolve I hadn't felt in years. "I would have been here, Sarah, if you'd let me. You pushed me away. You decided I wasn't part of this." We stood there, 2 women grieving the same man, yet divided by a wall of resentment. Finally, she stepped aside, letting me in. The apartment felt sterile, stripped of Tommy's warmth. His books, his guitar, his messy piles of notes, gone. It was as if he'd never been here. "I kept some of his things," Sarah said, softer now, pointing to a box in the corner. "I was going to send them to you." I knelt beside the box, my hands trembling as I lifted the lid. Inside were Tommy's journals, his favorite scarf, a photo of us at the beach when he was 10. Tears blurred my vision as I clutched the photo, his gap-toothed smile a reminder of simpler days. "Why didn't you call me sooner?" I whispered. "I could have been here." Sarah sat across from me, her shoulders slumping. "I didn't know how," she admitted. "Everything happened so fast. One day he was laughing, the next he couldn't breathe. I was scared, Evelyn. I didn't want to burden you with that. Burden me? I looked up, my voice breaking. He was my son. There's no burden heavier than losing him. For the first time I saw a crack in her armor. Her eyes welled up and she covered her face with her hands. I thought I was protecting him, she said, her voice muffled. He kept saying he didn't want you to see him weak. I thought I was doing what he wanted. We sat in silence, the weight of our shared loss settling between us. I realized then that Sarah wasn't the villain I'd painted her to be. She was grieving too, carrying a burden she hadn't known how to share. But I also knew I couldn't forgive her, not yet. Not when the pain of missing Tommy's final moments was so raw. Over the next few days I stayed in the city, determined to piece together the fragments of Tommy's final months. I visited the hospital where he'd been treated, speaking to nurses who remembered him. He was always smiling, one nurse, Maria, told me. Even when he was in pain, he'd ask about my day, make me laugh. Her words were a balm, but they also deepened my longing to have been there, to have held his hand. Maria mentioned a support group Tommy had attended, a place where patients and families shared their fears and hopes. I tracked down the group's facilitator, a kind-eyed woman named Clara, who welcomed me to their next meeting. Sitting in a circle of strangers, I listened as they shared stories of loss and resilience. One woman, Linda, spoke of her daughter's battle with cancer and how she'd found peace in creating a memory book of her daughter's life. The idea stuck with me, a way to honor Tommy, to keep him close. I returned to Sarah's apartment with a proposition. I want to make something for Tommy, I said, holding up one of his journals. A book of his life, his words, his stories, our memories. Will you help me? Sarah hesitated, her eyes searching mine. Why? She asked. What's the point now? The point is to remember him, I said. Not just the end, but all of him, the boy who loved comic books, the man who loved you. We both lost him, Sarah. Maybe this can help us find him again. She nodded slowly, and for the first time I saw a flicker of the woman Tommy had loved. We spent hours going through his journals, reading his thoughts on life, love, and even his illness. Tommy had written about Sarah's strength, how she'd kept him going, but also about me, how he missed our talks, how he wished he'd called more. Each word was a gift and a wound, a reminder of what we'd had and what we'd lost. As we worked, Sarah opened up. She told me about the nights she'd stayed up holding Tommy's hand as he slept, terrified of what the morning would bring. She admitted she'd pushed me away because she was angry, not at me but at the world, at the unfairness of it all. I thought if I controlled everything I could protect him, she said, but I couldn't, and I'm sorry I kept you from him. Her apology didn't erase the pain, but it softened it. I realized we were both carrying guilt, her for shutting me out, me for not fighting harder to be there. Together we began to heal, not by erasing the past, but by building something new. The memory book became our bridge, a way to honor Tommy's life and find a path forward. Weeks later, the book was finished, a tapestry of Tommy's words, photos, and our memories. We held a small gathering at the community center where the support group met, inviting friends, nurses, and even Clara. We shared stories, laughed, and cried, celebrating Tommy's life in a way I hadn't been able to at his funeral. Sarah stood beside me, her hand resting lightly on my arm, a silent promise that we'd navigate this grief together. As I drove home, the book on the passenger seat, I felt a shift inside me. The pain of losing Tommy would never fade, but I'd found a way to carry it. I'd learned that grief isn't just about loss. It's about love, about the pieces of someone you hold onto, even when they're gone. I thought of Tommy's smile, his laughter, his dreams, and I knew he wasn't truly gone. He lived in me and Sarah, in the pages we'd created together. The story of Tommy's life and the lesson it taught me is one I carry every day. To anyone watching this, I say this: hold your loved ones close, fight for every moment, and when loss comes, as it will, find a way to honor it, to turn pain into something beautiful. For me, that was the memory book. For you, it might be something else, a letter, a song, a moment of forgiveness. Whatever it